this lesson, we will be talking about the manner of articulation. The manner of articulation, mouth, it is the way the airstream is affected as it flows from the lungs and out to the nose and mouth. When we think of manner of articulation, it is about how the consonant are produced. Try to produce this sound, the s, 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 the t, 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 t. When we talk about the place of articulation, it's the where the sound are produced. In the manner of articulation is the how the sound produced. There are six basic manner of articulation that we will look at. The first in is stops. Stop or plosive, the nasal consonants are created when you completely block airflow through your mouth and let the air pass through your nose. For example, so we have these two sounds, the p or the b, b. Those are the sounds that cannot be stretched out or they cannot prolong. Second one is the fricative. While nasal and stop consonants involve a complete blockage of the vocal tract, fricative sounds involve only a partial blockage of the vocal tract so that the air has to be forced through a narrow channel. For example, the f and the v. For example, the f and the v. When you produce there's just enough space where the airstreams coming out there. The airstreams coming out through your mouth that is basically turbulent. It's not free flowing air, but it's a turbulent airstream that coming out through your mouth that causes these fricatives. And that turbulence causes friction, and that's why they're called fricatives. So you have that F or F or the V that owns as fricatives as opposed to the stops. Fricatives cannot be actually prolonged as long as you have air in your lungs. The third one is the affricate. When stop consonant mix with fricative consonants, the result is an affricate consonant. Affricate consonants start as stop sounds with air building up behind an articulator, which then releases through a narrow channel, as a fricative instead of a clean burst of stop do. For example, the t, t, and the d. Their behaving sort of stop occur in a burst of air then disappear. However, slightly different because they are not as explosive as the stops. They are a little bit softer and that's create the different qualities of the sound where start of like a stops and then it's smooth sound into a fricative. These two occur right here and that's why they are called alveopalatal affricative. The fourth one is the nasal. The nasal consonants are created when you completely block airflow through your mouth and let the air pass through your nose. For example, the then then the is called bilabial nasal, and then the is alveolar nasal. The fifth one is the liquids. Liquids are segments produced where airflow is allowed to continue through the vocal tract at relatively uninhibited. In English, the two K liquids are L and the E, the lateral, which is the letter, the L, and then the retroflex, the R or the right or the carry, car, it's called retroflex. When you're producing at the tip of the tongue, lightly bends backward, and that's what retroflex means. Retro meaning back, and then flex meaning bending. These two are actually alveolar liquids. But if you say alveolar liquids, you may say one so. To be very clear, we call the lateral the alveolar and the retroflex as the alveolar retroflex. The last manner of articulation is the glides. The glides are segments that essentially produce like tiny vowels. These are sounds produced with little obstruction of the airstream. In English, there are just two glides. The E, which sounds like a really short, they are produced by a complete or partial closure of the airstream in the vocal tract. Sounds produced with a relatively wide opening of the mouth. And the little turbulence, they are also called the semi-vowels. The glide English language are the wo and the y or the ye. Ye. So if you think of these two sounds, you're actually produced with a lot of air coming from the mouth. Just really opening of the mouth, and we have way or a walk. Then the ye or the yes, they call the semi-vowels. This place will affect how they behave. So in all of these cases that you can see where the glides are occurring, the beginning of the syllables. So for examples, you have way, which is clearly in the beginning, but you also have a walk, and that's the beginning of the syllables. Same thing, the yes and the gruyere, and for example, the wo is called the bilabial glide, and then the ye is the called alveolar palatal glide. So if we go back in the beginning of the video, what is the difference between the n and then the l? So the n is called the alveolar nasal, and the l is called the alveolar lateral. And then next is the s is called the alveolar fricative, and then the t, the alveolar stop. The t or the t cannot be prolonged and stopped. They are both different because of the manner of articulation.